Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my insane neighbor Karen repeatedly parked in front of my house in my garden. She claims she has permission to park there and then calls the police on me when I get her towed away. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the story. The title story starts like this. I live in one of those neighborhoods where the front garden area is larger than the back garden. Each of the houses on my street have said front garden right next to their driveway. Some people add fences around their garden, but when I bought my house it came without a fence, so I just left it as it was. I noticed that the grass was not in the best of conditions and spent a good few weeks bringing it to a full recovery. In the first month of my new living, one of my neighbors, we will call her Karen, was on holiday, so I would not get to meet her until she was home. And well, said meeting ended up being interesting to say the least. I was on the way home from the supermarket and just as I was about to pull into my driveway, I spotted a car on my front lawn. I was immediately angered because of the effort I went through to make the grass nice, but I soon calmed myself down. I was sure there was a rational explanation. I noticed my other neighbor was home from her holiday. She was doing some weeding in her garden. "Hey, you must be my new neighbor," she said with a smile as she saw me approaching. "That would be me. It's a lovely neighborhood. Say, do you happen to know whose car that is?" I asked, pointing over to said car on my lawn. "Yes, that would be mine," she stated with another smile and went back to weeding. "Oh well, would you maybe move it?" I asked. "Sorry, no." "Why not?" "Well, because that's where I park my car. You're gonna have to get used to it." Her smile had gone, replaced by the beginning of a scowl. "Ma'am, that's my garden, and I'm not giving you permission to do this. The previous owner allowed it. Now you must do it as well." "That doesn't make any sense. Please just move your car." "Why can't you park it there?" I gestured to the driveway we were standing next to. "Well, because then my car will block my view from the kitchen to my lawn." I almost laughed. This whole conversation seemed ridiculous. "Okay, well, park it on the road, please." "What, and risk it getting hit by another car or something? No thanks." "Listen, you cannot park your car in my garden. This is me telling you I forbid it. No question." "Well, we'll see about that." She gave me a condescending smile, got up and went over to her car. She got in the car and made the wheels spin viciously, destroying my grass. She drove her car to her driveway, driving dangerously close to me to scare me. I went inside and watched as she, straight away, moved her car back to my yard. This happened for the next few weeks. "Well, if you park your car there once more, I will have it towed," I told her one afternoon, to which she simply smiled at. So the next day when she parked her car there, I called the local towing company and had it towed. "Where is my car?" Karen had stormed over and banged on my door. "It's at the impound lot half a mile down the road," I stated. "How dare you? You had it towed?" "Trust me, I'll be getting my revenge, mister." She pointed her finger in my face and then stormed back over to her house. The following morning I woke up and headed outside to go to work as I usually do. But I was met with quite a shock. My car was absolutely covered in eggshells and yolk. I'd been egged. My whole house was in a similar state. Whoever had done it must have used nearly 50 eggs total. I knew who it was alright, because standing in front of her door with a huge smirk plastered across her face was Karen. "Was this you?" I demanded, to which she simply shrugged and went into her house. I spent the next few hours cleaning my car and house, fuming at the situation. I also knew that I had no proof it was her who did this, so I would not be able to turn her in or anything for it. I went to work and came back to find her car was back on my driveway. I swear, I nearly burst a blood vessel. This time she had clamped her own wheel, so even if I called a tow truck, it would take them so long to remove it that it almost was not worth it. I did not even drive onto my driveway. Instead, I turned around and went to a hardware store to get some cameras, which I installed the second I got home. I didn't speak to Karen, I didn't tell her to move her car, I didn't do anything. I wanted to get video footage of her being on my lawn and her driving on it and her clamping her own wheel. All of this I got within a week, and honestly, once I had it, I didn't even know what to do with it. "If you keep parking your car there, I'll be going to the police," I told her the following afternoon. "Ha, sure, and with what proof?" For some reason I had a gut feeling that it wouldn't be a good idea to tell her about the security cameras. "Well, when they arrive and see your car on my lawn, I think they will have all the proof they need." She rolled her eyes and slammed the door. At midnight, when I was fast asleep, I heard a scratching noise coming from outside my window. I thought I must be dreaming, and so I ignored it. A couple of hours later, I woke up once more to the sound of a truck reversing, and now I was too curious to ignore the noises coming from outside. I slowly rolled out of bed and looked outside, astonished to see my car being towed away from my very own driveway. As I ran downstairs, throwing on a rope in the process, I saw that my car had scratched and marks all over it. I guess I did not make up the noise. "Hey, stop what you are doing!" I yelled so whoever was driving would hear. "Ha, is this not a car ready for the junkyard?" The guy stopped his truck and got out. "What? No, this is my car." I was frantic as I looked at the damages to the car. "Well, she called and had just told me it's to be taken to the junkyard. Says she lives here and it's her car." I turned and saw Karen, who gave me a small wave and a smirk. "Well, I can assure you she does not live here and this is not her car. I'm sorry you have wasted your time, but if you like you can tow this one." I have all the proof that she is parking there illegally. In a hushed voice so Karen wouldn't hear, I showed and told him what was happening. And he very quickly unclamped my car and hooked up Karen's car to the pulley system. Turns out I was wrong, it could be towed even with a clamp on the wheel, especially when said clamp is covering over the wheel that won't be touching the floor. "Hey, stop that!" Karen yelled as he drove away. I watched as she whipped out her phone and started calling the cops, telling them that I was towing her car off her property and away from the place she had permission to park. "I already had to pay a fine last time. Why would you do that?" she yells once off the phone. "I warned you." I shrugged. My eyes widened as she approached me and shoved me to the floor, kicking me in the ribs. She heard sirens and stepped away, suddenly scared that she had realized her mistake. The police arrived and saw the scene, and even if that was all they needed to see, I had the cameras to show everything. "You don't understand. He was threatening to attack me." Karen screeched, her eyes wide with fear of the repercussions, which I think she knew were close. "Come with us," they spoke to her. She was dragged kicking and screaming to the station. I went with them after getting dressed. I brought the camera footage too. We did not even need to go to court. There was no case to be fought as all the proof was there. "You filmed me without permission. That's a crime, right?" "This invalidates the evidence, right?" She was frantic, trying to get out of the situation with whatever she could think of. The officers sighed and just carried on looking at the footage, and then they asked if I wanted to press charges. I stared right into Karen's beady eyes as I said yes. They fined her for the maximum amount, $45,000, which covers the damages to the car, the damages to my lawn, the emotional damage, and the assault. I told them about the egging too, and given the other stuff, they believed me. She was in absolute hysterics, claiming it wasn't that deep and this fine is surely unjust. On top of all of that, she got some time behind bars as well. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Rich snob neighbor turned his garden into a racetrack. I thought that I had heard every type of crazy neighbor story and did not think anything could top it. And then neighbor moved in 2 houses down from me and decided to go for the record of how many neighbors he could annoy at once right away. When he bought the house, he did not even move in right away. We could just hear a lot of construction going on in his back garden, which was a decent chunk of land. Fair enough though, because some people want decks out back or to do different things. The construction noises were a bit annoying, but they did not last long, and soon we could all return to peace. Or so we thought. When he moved in, I actually thought he was the kid of the people who must have owned it, because it was not too common to see a guy in his early 20s buying an expensive home. It turns out though that he had hit a certain age and gotten a huge amount of inheritance from his rich family. Instead of saving it though, he blew it on a house that could hold a family of 6 all for himself and make it into his 24/7 party house. Now, I don't know if he soundproofed it or what, but he could have had a giant party and nobody would have heard it. That sounds like a dream come true until you remember the backyard. Well, he did not build a deck like I originally thought. No, he turned the entire backyard into a racetrack for him and his friends. To put this into perspective for you, this guy never seemed to sleep and there was the constant revving of engines in his backyard. They would race them, smash them into each other and make a ton of noise going into the middle of the night. So it was no surprise that every neighbor was pissed off at him, and after only a couple of days the police were called. I was hoping they would tell him to knock it off and that he could not have a racetrack in his backyard. Unfortunately, we found out no such specific law exists, and also we don't live somewhere with quiet hours, so technically even the time of day does not matter. Everyone liked to have their windows open and breathe in nice fresh air. Due to this though, everyone was keeping their windows closed in hopes of suppressing the loud car noises just for a little while. It felt horrible, like I was being trapped in my own house, unable to open a window for some fresh air. Even if you could get over the noise while living within a few houses of him, meant there was another serious problem. All the racing on dirt caused the wind to pick it up in the air and for the whole area to be dirt flying around and getting into your eyes and lungs. When I say it was constant, I really mean that too. 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. friends came and went into his house and into the garden to race the cars. It turns out that racing was not even the only thing they were doing back there. Some of the noise actually came from the fact that these dumb young adults were getting into used clunkers and smashing them into each other. It turns out that neighbor was using a bunch of his riches to keep buying cheap crappy cars for his friends to play in and destroy. The cops were called about this as well, but as far as I knew, nothing ever happened to it. For weeks it carried on, and one neighbor even gave up and moved away because she was right next to him and could not handle it any longer. He kept trying to make his garden more fancy of a racetrack by buying seating and speakers that would now blast music on top of everything else. Now that you probably all hate the neighbor too, you are wondering what I did in retaliation to all of this. Honestly, I did not do anything to help contribute to his downfall, neither did any of my neighbors, because all they would do is call the police, who never seemed to do anything about this problem. No, the person that was neighbor's downfall was the neighbor himself. One of the reasons he was able to constantly party was that he was living off his inheritance instead of working. While I do think an inheritance large enough to get you a house and a continuous stream of used cars can be enough to live off of it, it clearly was not how he was spending it. Instead of saving it or investing it, it turned out that he blew all of it in a matter of weeks. Turns out he was trying to impress his friends and they did not seem impressed by the old cars he was buying, so he started to drop a ton of money on fancy cars for them to all destroy. Honestly, if he was not such a jerk, I might have felt bad about his friends pretty blatantly taking advantage of the fact that he was now rich. Since his house was paid for in full by him, that was not getting taken away. When I saw the truck coming and taking out fancy things like giant TVs and pool tables, I knew that his money had finally run out. The moment we all were waiting for arrived when there was silence in the air from his garden. He simply did not have any money to keep his racetrack going and everyone seemed to move on. The problem was though that every neighbor still hated this kid and he was surrounded by people that wanted nothing to do with him or wanted him to just get up and leave. I guess he did not realize how fast he could blow through his entire inheritance either, because one day I saw him leaving in his car. I could clearly see the McDonald's logo on his shirt and knew that this kid who was given a huge inheritance was now making minimum wage at a McDonald's just to survive. I feel absolutely no pity for him because he probably spent a few $1,000,000 in only a few weeks just to watch his friends race and crash into each other with cars. When I think about some of these nice cars I saw taken to that back garden and never come out, I shudder a little because people would work years for it and the neighbor just went along and destroyed it. And you know, Ripe Stars, I think in the past videos we have said that one of the best revenges you can get is a life well lived. Well, in this story, from the neighbor's point of view, it is a bit like the opposite. I mean, I'm not exactly happy for the kid that he ruined his life, but in the end it was his choice to blow the money and nobody forced him to spend the money on useless stuff. Either way, if you would inherit, or let's say win $1,000,000, what would you do with the money? Let us know in the comments. The next one is titled Condescending Manager. I have worked at my current hotel more than long enough that at any other business I would be treated as if I was just as competent as any other employee. But unfortunately, I have the weirdest, most baby talky mother trucker of a manager. I was warned when I first started working here by the previous person that this behavior will continue until there is another new person. She apparently had dealt with this for 3 years. So, on to the story. My manager starts hovering as he usually does because I am new and starts saying things like, "You could do this to make it faster," or "I usually click these buttons." But the one thing he says that pisses me off more than anything is when he says F1 and then F5 to save and check out the folio. Like, damn, I can remember 2 things. All of these little suggestions are always unprompted. But I have one more thing up my sleeves. I'm younger and better than him at anything technology related, so obviously I decided to switch that little shortcut to F5 first and then F1. The next day he starts his usual suggestions, all the while I am waiting for F1 and then F5. He finally says it and the following interaction occurred. Me? Ha, so you're trying to mess me up now? That's new. Him, what? Me, it's always been F5 and then F1. Approaches computer after letting out the most effin' sarcastic I've ever heard. Him, no, check this out. He stands there confused as nothing happens when he hits F1 and I am just sitting there watching him, but I decide to mess with him more. Me, is this some sort of weird test? Why are you doing it wrong? Him, no, it's always been this way. He really trailed off like Mind F trailed off. Me, well, here comes some customers, let me take over again. He walks away looking extremely confused and as he's walking away, him, okay, right. I really hope that ends his hovering. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I really hate those people that always know everything better than you and always try to correct you even when you do something right. Either way, if you enjoy the stories about entitled people, revenge and neighbors, then please feel free to post some star emojis in the comments and maybe even like the video if you enjoy my daily content. Thank you so much for your amazing support. Recently we reached 1000 plus likes on pretty much every single video and I am so grateful for your awesome support. Thank you so much. And the next one is titled 50-year-old disabled woman made Karen eat pavement, posted by user pastgreen3754 on our own subreddit r/ripestories. I am a 50-year-old physically disabled person. I have adhesive arachnoiditis and depending on how my disease flares up determines what mobility aid I have to use each day. Anyway, aside from my mother, I've never had to deal with a Karen. However, this ended in 2021. The people involved are entitled Karen in training, myself OP, Karen's sweet wheelchair-bound mother, bystander 1, bystander 2, deputy 1, deputy 2, and normal brother. I pulled into a handicapped spot in the parking lot of a well-known supercenter. I would call it Brawl Mart. And well guys, I guess during the Black Friday time this is a pretty accurate name for Walmart. Anyway, I received a call from my mother and sat in the car for a few minutes while we talked. The car was running because it was about 90 degrees outside. As I was talking to my mother, a car stopped behind me and started honking her horn for me to move. I looked out the window and did see that she had a handicap plate. I opened my window, put my hand up and said, "I'm not pulling out, I'm just on the phone and will be going into the store." I'm not sure if she, EK, heard me or not, but she continued to honk her horn and yell. After finishing the call, I reached over, grabbed my cane and started to get out of the car. As I was getting out, I was met by a full-on, maybe 25-year-old Karen in training. Right down to the hair, clothes, nail and everything. So, as I was opening the door, EK ran over and pushed my door to close it and yelled, "No, we are not going to play this game. Get the hell out of this spot. I need it for my mom." When she pushed the door shut, it closed on my leg, which hurt quite a bit, but I kept it to myself. I proceeded to tell EK that I had just pulled into this spot and was simply finishing a call. I looked across from where I was standing and pointed out to EK that there were 2 handicapped spots free right there. EK started yelling again, saying she didn't care and that I needed to move my butt out of the spot because she wanted this one, since it was closer to the entrance. I got out of my car, closed and locked the door and told her, "Sorry, I need this spot too, and I got here first." EK then started yelling, telling people to look that I was illegally parking in a handicapped spot. One bystander, said to the EK, "Can't you see that she has handicapped plates and is using a cane?" EK then started saying that I was using my parents' car and taking advantage of the plates. I threw my hands up and started to walk away. EK then grabbed my arm and pushed me into my car and told me to move it before she grabs my cane and beats me with it. Meanwhile, there happened to be 2 deputies on the other side of the parking lot, and bystander 2 went over to tell them something that was going on the other side. When EK grabbed my arm and pushed me back towards my car and threatened me, I lost it, and in hindsight I'm not proud of my actions. I may be 50 and disabled, but I'll be damned if someone was going to push me around, especially this little Karen girl. As I turned around, EK used her fingers and pushed my shoulder, yelling that I better move. Well, I had enough. So as she moved towards me again, I stuck out my cane and it got tangled up in her ankles. EK went down and hard. EK cut her knees and scraped her hands from the fall. EK started screaming for someone to call the police because I just assaulted her. And just at that moment, Deputy 1 and 2 that were on the other side of the parking lot got there just as I tripped EK up with my cane. I thought to myself, just great, now I'm going to get arrested. EK limped over to the deputies crying and saying her leg was broken because I attacked her for no reason at all. She claimed I got out of my car and ran up to her and just pushed her for no reason. EK told them to arrest me this instant because she was pressing charges. Deputy 1 came over to me, asked for my ID and asked me to tell him my side of the story, so I started to tell him. As I was telling the Deputy 1, EK was yelling that I was lying and she wanted me in handcuffs right now. As this exchange was going on between EK, Deputy 1 and me, bystander 2, who was maybe 16, walked up to Deputy 2 and was showing him something. Deputy 2 then walked over to EK and me and said, "Would you like to press charges, ma'am?" I resigned myself to the fact that I would be spending at least a couple hours in jail. EK answered the deputy and said, "Yes, she did." Deputy 2 quickly stopped her and said, "I was not talking to you." He then looked at me and proceeded to tell me that the BS2 recorded the entire incident on her phone and it was clear that EK assaulted me and I was just defending myself. EK started wailing, saying that it wasn't true. Now, through all this, EK's wheelchair-bound mother, SWBM, was sitting in the car crying her eyes out, and to my horror, the car was off. Windows were closed and she was unable to get out of the car, and like I said, it was like 90 degrees outside. I told the deputy I did not want to press charges, but I couldn't stomach leaving her SWBM in the parking lot alone. Just as I was saying that, a young man turned out to be EK's normal brother got out of his car and yelled at EK, asking her what she did now. Apparently NB was meeting EK and SWBM to do some shopping. So, with SWBM taken care of, I did press charges and EK was taken away in handcuffs. After I picked up what I needed from the store, I had to go to the sheriff's department and file a formal complaint. As I was sitting with the Deputy 1, he informed me that not only was EK being charged with assault, but she also blew a .10 on a breathalyzer. When he told me her name, I started laughing. This woman truly was a Karen, as that was her real first name. Charges were filed, and 3 days later Deputy 1 called me to tell me that since it was EK's third DUI, her bond was at $50,000. Deputy 1 told me that EK's family had enough of her antics and refused to pay her bond. 3 months later, and EK had pled guilty to simple assault and being in command of a vehicle while under the influence. EK was given 5 years with all but 18 months suspended, and I was given a protective order against EK, meaning she could not contact me in any way, even through a third party, as well as the standard that she must stay 100 yards away and such. The district attorney told me that after EK completes her 18 months, she will have 3.5 years of probation. Her license will be suspended for a year after her release. Once she gets her license back, her car will most likely be fitted with an ignition interlock, forcing EK to blow into a machine which checks her alcohol level. If it is too high, the car won't start. And by the way, ripe stars, I've never heard of that before, but I think that's an absolutely genius way to punish people who felt like it's necessary to drive after drinking alcohol. Anyway, hopefully this EK has learned her lesson, but considering her record, probably not. SWBM did reach out to me again and apologized for her daughter's behavior. I accepted her apology, but I told her she didn't need to. She was not responsible for the decisions and actions of her crazy adult daughter. Also, hopefully I won't run into EK once she gets out. Thanks for taking the time to read my story. Update: I found out this Tuesday, the 7th of December, that EK has been placed in a prison for women that have substance abuse problems. While I'm not happy that if she successfully finishes this program, she could get out 6 months early, maybe she will get help and stay sober. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.